Season's greetings. This is my year in reading, 2024. I read a lot of journals this year. I found that I had um, greater success when I could focus on shorter pieces because I just didn't have the time or the bandwidth um, to give to longer pieces on the page for some reason, although the page is my preferred form of reading. I read a lot more audiobooks this year than I normally do, but reading is done, and that is the point. And if I enjoyed it, that is the point, not the numbers. Um, I think I got up into the high 20s this year, all told, between the journals and the books. Books alone, a lot lower, but doesn't matter. Reading is reading, and reading is my happy place. So some zines, Art House, Antigua zine, a lot of Catapult resident blogs. And what I love about those is just diving into another creative's process, seeing how and why and all of that, where they create. This is all from the Catapult Arts Grant that helped Caribbean writers during the pandemic. These are the recipients of the stay at home residency, and they're sort of documenting of their process, what they did during their, I think, 3 month residency. Um, I read a lot of, I guess, what we considered YA this year. Um, so I think my reading really kick-started with the Percy Jackson books. I read about three of those. Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, Percy Jackson Sea of Monsters, Percy Jackson Titan's Curse, all audiobooks. And I think that was the trigger for that was the series because I did discover the series and I found it quite entertaining, and so I wanted to read the books. Um, and then somewhere around that time, I also read The Long Walk, which is something I've been wanting to read for a long time, but from Stephen King's Richard Bachman era. And I also finished Caribbean writer Shakira Bourne's Nightmare Island somewhere around that time as well. Yeah. And I think my last YA for the year was probably Dancing in the Rain by Lynn Joseph. Dancing in the Rain was one of the Bertha Ward books. Bertha Ward was established to promote YA reading in different parts of the world, but in the case of us here in the Caribbean, teen YA reading. My own book, Musical Youth, is a part of that series of books that were funded by the Burt Award and released through Bocas and various Caribbean partners. What else did I read this year? I read Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I This is perhaps the start. Well, not the start. This was during my late summer. After I hadn't had any progress for a while, late summer I started reading audiobooks, which if you follow my blogger and books, you know that I struggle with audiobooks because my attention span, like I end up having to rewind, I miss something. But I don't know, this time around it worked. Demon Copperhead was a roller coaster, heartwarming, frustrating, um, just complex book about, I guess technically it's about the opioid crisis in parts of America, rural America, but it's really about um, the coming of age of a boy to a young man, and I think that's relatable wherever you are. I found the character extremely engaging, and which meant that I had all the reactions that I would if he was one of my kids when they're screwing up and when they're hurt and when they're hopeful, all the feelings with Demon Copperhead. Um, so I finished Mr. Loverman. That was a print book I finished this year by Bernadine Evaristo. Um, Jeffrey Philp. That's another. That's a Caribbean writer who did I guess, a graphic novel for kids about a legendary figure in Pan African movement, Marcus Garvey. Um, which is an inspired way to tell the story of Marcus Garvey to a new generation. Really well done by a Caribbean publisher, Blouse and Skirt, um, Tanya Batson Savage in Jamaica. Um, I have Tina McElroy Answer and the 90s generation of black women writers listed simply because I read them before I was blogging, but they were hugely influential. You're talking the Terry McMillan era, the B.B. Moore Campbell era. Tina McElroy Answer was a big part of that. She died this year, um, which it was so weird because she was very active on social media, and then she just wasn't, and I just felt the need to revisit her canon, and so I did. Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. Um, I read that this year. I don't know why I don't have it listed as an audiobook because it perhaps was, I think, after the Percy Jackson books and the Richard Bachman book, it was perhaps like my first adult audiobook of the year. I've been wanting to read Octavia Butler for a long time. I'm actually reading another Octavia Butler right now, Fledgling, but Parable of the Sower was so good and so terrifying because we are living the future. Um, Private Eyes by Jonathan Kellerman. I kind of read this book the whole time, feel like I'd read it already, but Kellerman was one of those authors. His Alex Delaware, Milo Sturgis series was kind of like comfort food for me. Not comfort food. My comfort food was probably Maeve Binchy, but like I don't know. It's just I would just read them. I would stay up at night reading them to finish them to find out who done it. It's a thriller. It's a who done it type thing. Um, this Toni Morrison story that was reissued as a book. I'm not sure how to say it properly. Recitative. I read that. Quite liked it. Was one of those sort of human puzzles of a book in terms of what's really happening and really interesting because of it. Um, Reclaim, Restore, Return, Futurist Tales from the Caribbean. That was a big read for me this year because during my residency with Intersect Antigua Barbuda, I wrote about my own writing progress and process. And then I switched over to writing about some of the art I was consuming. And this was the first and I think only book I wrote about. And it's different writers from the Caribbean grappling with climate and other unrelated issues, but from the perspective of like speculative fiction. So a lot of interesting takes. Um, some of it quite hopeful. Um, some of it, I mean, much of it, all of it, very thought provoking. But why I say hopeful is that it feels like most of the stories are trying to present solutions as opposed to just kind of sitting in the mire of what we've created. Uh, Speak Out is also in that period of journals that I'm reading, um, online journals. This one is from the Commonwealth Writers. The Spectator, that's a local publication. Today's Butterfly, that's a book that I actually edited. So it counts as something that I read. It came out this year. It's a mystery for I would say preteens. Really different take for this writer who I've edited for before. A different type of book for her. Really fun. A Caribbean classic that is also one of those books like I feel like I've read it before because it's just so known, but maybe I haven't. So I just decided to sit down and read it, especially given that Michael Anthony is now with the Ancestors, the year in San Fernando. And I read Eve's autobiography this year. I caught some of the interviews and I just ended up putting that on my audiobook list. So those are the books that I read this year. Which is my favorite? I don't know. I quite like. I mean, just scrolling through this, the standouts for me would be Reclaim, Restore, Return. Um, Perhaps I guess my favorite would be between the Barbara Kingsolver and the Octavia Butler, um, just in terms of really thorough literary journeys and books that kind of hang around with you. That's just off the top of my head, though. Um, but I really, in the end, enjoyed most of the books that I read, and I DNF'd more books than I normally do because I just didn't have the time. If I wasn't either engaged with or enjoying something I was reading, I decided to put it down. Maybe that's a product of getting older, or maybe that's just being more honest with myself. I want to read what I want to read, and I don't want to read what I don't want to read. So if I read a book, something kept me going. And if I wrote about it, it means I had something to say. That's it. That's my year in reading. How was yours?